Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. We're going to have an interesting discussion today. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee bus system, which some say is dying a slow death. We'll talk about what Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett should do now that he can focus on being Milwaukee Mayor. And we'll talk about this incredible, never-ending heat wave. All right, let me introduce everybody. You know longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Denise Callaway, community affairs and public relations professional. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz is going to be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, Milwaukee County supervisors got a big warning from the folks who run the bus system this week. They were told that without additional state or federal funding, local tax support for the bus system will have to skyrocket. Otherwise, the system will have to shrink by nearly 30% in the next 5 years. I've often wondered why not charge riders the bus fares you need to have if you're going to have a bus system. Why do the taxpayers need to support a bus system? Now, I ride occasionally, Joel. You ride a lot.
Yeah, I ride quite a bit. Well, but more than that, of course, most of the people who ride full-time are people who have no other access to transportation. And the reason why you don't charge them through the roof is because they're poor. And they need transportation to get to the jobs. We need that kind of a system in our community for people who don't have automobiles. An enormous amount of taxpayer money goes into automobiles and supporting automobiles and building roads and filling the pockets of road contractors. Mass transportation, which serves people who have no other options, has to be in any decent community. In most communities, it doesn't come off the property tax like it does here. It's certainly not paid for 100% by the riders. That's impossible. We have one of the highest fares in the country, and it can't begin to pay the cost of the system. It's as important as jobs because it gets people to jobs. We have we've heard these warnings before, and we've watched the system disappear before our eyes. I think some of our leaders have done some pretty creative things. This past year, these express systems came up that can be paid for with federal funds because they couldn't pay for the regular service. Mm-hmm. I used to take the regular service. Now I take the express service. It's exactly the same service. So, they do whatever they can to keep it going, but we need another funding source. And of course, the voters of Milwaukee County voted for another funding source.
Kevin, I never recall a year where the bus company wasn't complaining that they didn't have enough money.
Well, just a couple of years ago, I attended a meeting that the county board supervisors invited Milwaukee area legislators and their staff members to hear about the plight of the parks and the transit system. And at that meeting, the presentation was that if we don't do this and if we don't do that, the sky is falling. The park system would deteriorate, and the bus system as we know it would vanish. And that just doesn't happen. And I think what
certainly deteriorating.
Well, what has transpired in recent years is that Milwaukee County has always found ways to avert a disaster by literally pulling rabbits out of the hat, including using reserve funds and making gradual fare increases coupled with gradual cuts in service, and they've delayed important capital expenditures. You do have options, but unfortunately, they all have drawbacks. You can seek a sales tax. It has to get voter approval. You mentioned that, Joel. It did pass this last go-around, but very slim margin, 51 to 49. You also need state legislative approval for a regional sales tax increase. You could try to divert funds from other county services and programs and put that towards more mass transit. You could put the management of the system up for open bidding and maybe save money and the system using that approach. You can continue to make service cuts. You can continue to increase fares. So you do have possible solutions, but none of them are very popular. That you do need a principal source of funding. That's what experts have been saying for years, but nobody knows really what that is.
Denise, the big problem in Milwaukee, though, is the perception and maybe the reality that the buses are not safe to ride.
Well, I think that's a perception in reality that's probably much more closely held by people who don't ride the bus. I think when people ride the bus, they do find that it is a safe opportunity for them to be able to get around town, get back and forth to work, and wherever else they need to go. Kevin is right in that we've got to figure out a long-term solution to this, and there has to be some kind of stable, long-term funding stream for the bus company. What it's doing now, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You raise fares just a little bit to try to cover some of those costs, and you find that riders drop. Because riders drop, then you have to cut routes. You cut routes, and then fewer people are riding because they're not able to get to where they need to go. This is just what we're seeing here is a major metropolitan area's transit system gradually being whittled away down to the point where it's a shell of itself.
To the point where it's not a county system, it's now a city system if you compress, and now people can't get to those jobs in those outlying areas.
That's the key thing.
And the
That's the key thing.
the economy of the region then suffers.
It does. So, while a tax is not a popular option for anybody, the reality of it is that is one option that we absolutely have to consider and that we need to see some movement on in terms of taking it to the legislature, because right now it is the best option that we have. An unpopular option, but it's the best option that I think we have.
But I can never imagine this governor signing something to allow a tax to support the Milwaukee County bus system.
Well, a tax is the only option. Now, whether it's the property tax, which I think is a bad option, that's
Very
what
bad.
we're under right now, and that's one of the reasons we're unable to support the system that we have, let alone a system that can be properly supported and include some growth for those communities that are expanding outside the city of Milwaukee. A sales tax is a far better option. It certainly causes less harm to the pocketbooks of those in the community that, if at any moment wanted to use public transportation, would have the ability to do so and will have paid for that by having reasonable fares and really very good service. I've ridden the bus an awful lot too. They tend to be timely. They also tend to be fairly clean and devoid of a lot of problems. One of the things, though, that we are going to have to grapple with, and it's a political question, and it's not just the tax, it's who's going to run the system. And Kevin kind of alluded to it. The system we have right now is currently privately owned. They report, though, to the county board and administration. The problem that we're having is that as we have growth outside in the collar communities of Milwaukee that also have their own transportation systems, there's going to have to be some economies achieved by bringing those systems together, having one management of it, one tax that supports it, and reasonable fares that will allow you to originate in one community, travel to another, and back to the other without having multiple fare sliding fees.
Those express routes that
fares.
you ride on, they're very popular and are working well. They're well designed. They're destination focused. I think maybe that's the model you use for the entire
But
system.
there's another problem here, and I've got to mention it, which is that right-wing radio in this town has demonized mass transportation. And they do it in the most insulting ways. They make fun of the people who ride the bus system as, they're poor and they're losers. If they weren't losers, they would have their own cars. And while they praise highway construction to the heavens, they belittle mass transportation in any form, whether it's light rail or the bus system or a track. This shouldn't be a right or a left kind of political issue. It is a community issue that shouldn't be politicized. It's something any community needs.
All right, next topic. Now that Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett can focus his attention on that one job, what issues need to be front and center on his radar? And will Barrett be able to attack those issues in the next 4 years if he hasn't been able to resolve them in the previous 8 years he's been on the job?
I really didn't want this question. We need someone that's innovative, forward-thinking, and it even gets me back to the topic we just covered. The mayor's response to public transportation in terms of creativity has been his trolley around the center of the downtown. That's not creative. I think many would agree that it's probably a waste of money even, that if it could be applied to the current system that we have of bus transit, would probably improve that system for the next several years. It inevitably would delay a decision that has to be made with that infusion of 50+ million bucks. But that's kind of been what we can expect in the 3 areas that he said he would focus on when he became mayor: jobs, education, and crime. So in those 3 areas, I'd say 2 years ago, you might have given the mayor a different mark with regards to crime. Now that we've got this hubbub about whether or not the crime statistics are reliable, there may be some who will sit back and say maybe they wouldn't give him as high a mark as they would have otherwise. With regards to education, his leadership has been abysmal. And with regards to job creation and job placement, it hasn't been any better. So I don't know that his leadership has been what people had expected it would be, what people had hoped it would have been at the time that he was first elected. And I'm not certain that he's going to miraculously rise to the level of expectation that people have for a mayor of this size community, and certainly a community like Milwaukee that needs better leadership.
Denise, the people like him and they reelected him again.
Right.
If you could tell him what he should focus on that he hasn't heard a million times before, what would it be?
Well, I don't know if there's anything I could tell him he could focus on that he hasn't heard a million times before. I think it is really those key things. How do we position our city to be more attractive to individuals who want to bring and grow jobs in the community? I mean, to me, that's huge. We take a look at the Tower Automotive Plant, and the movement that really has taken place there has been movement that the city has created by moving one of its own departments there. So how do we take a look at finding ways in which we make Milwaukee attractive? And we do have to find creative ways in which to do that. On education, we need to find a way that, quite frankly, he can be a better partner. How can we have these creative discussions about what we need to do to improve opportunities for all kids? And I think that that's something, excuse me, that could really be very, very helpful to us. On crime, well, maybe it's not what we thought it was. That's a mess that has got to be straightened out. And where I think the chief is sincere in saying, we've made mistakes. We're going back, we're asking the FBI to correct them. They've even gone back and asked the FBI to correct even further, but the FBI only stays within that 2-year window. These are the issues that he has to address, because these are the issues that are going to make or break this community. Are educational options good enough for people to want to move here with the jobs that they bring with them, and to create jobs here, and do people feel like it's a safe community? Until you get your arms around those 3 things, I don't know what else you can creatively do that's going to have an impact.
In a city this size, does the mayor really have a lot of power, or is he pretty much a figurehead?
I think he's got a lot of power. I agree and disagree with everything I've heard so far. In a way, I think the mayor's best role so far has been creating jobs and creating new industries. What he did to attract a train building company to the north side of Milwaukee, which was the most depressed job area in the city, and then have it sabotaged by the governor of the state, that was heartbreaking, because that was really a good thing to do, and the first mayor in several mayors who's paid any attention to that area. When there's a lot of new industry in the valley, I never really believed the Menominee Valley was going to turn into this, blossoming industrial paradise that everyone envisioned. But I have to admit that things are moving there, and things are looking good. I have to give him on the other side of the ledger, really kind of bad marks on the education question that Denise mentions, because a couple years ago he wanted to take over the whole system. He wanted to run everything, and this was going to benefit everybody. When he didn't get to take over that system, when he and the governor failed at that, then I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard a peep out of him about education. And the best thing that was said during that whole community debate by Congresswoman Gwen Moore was, if this debate shows anything, it is all hands on deck for education. And instead, after he didn't get his way, I haven't seen anything from him, any leadership from him on that issue.
Kevin,
Let me say one more thing, though, because I both criticized him and praised him a bit. On the other hand, population is going up in the city. He's reversed, to some extent, what Denise was asking for, making this an attractive place. Population is moving back into the city.
What should he be doing, Kevin, that he isn't doing?
Well, he needs to become a stronger leader in practically every issue that's important to the city. We've touched on them tonight. Bill Clinton was right. It's the economy, stupid. The unemployment rate, especially among blacks in this city, is atrocious. That needs to be addressed. He needs to continue to partner with the state on areas like the Menominee Valley, where the city and the state have been tremendous partners. He also has to work with the county, who wants in on the action now under Chris Abele. The county has not been a major player when it comes to economic development. Chris Abele wants to change that, and the mayor has to do whatever it takes to make that mix work. On education, I take the philosophy that the late Henry Meyer had, and that was that the mayor should have nothing to do with education. If he does, then he should get out of the racket and run for superintendent or school board or what have you. Because when this mayor did get involved, we saw what happened. It was a disaster with his whole idea.
But education is so important to this community. How can you just take hands off?
Well,
and the city already is engaged and involved by being able to charter, and it does charter,
we elect people to make those tough, hard decisions. And finally, I think he needs to make a fix that he is incapable of perpetrating or doesn't want to, and that is that he has to undergo a major attitudinal change. Former Mayor John Norquist, I think, said it best about Tom Barrett, that he lacks fire in the belly. He does not possess a strong desire to aggressively pursue solutions to the issues impacting the city. And given where he is in his life, given where he is in his political career, I just don't see him making that personality change.
All right, next topic. These record hot temperatures never seem to end. Every day the forecasters say, well, there's a chance of storms, but they don't seem to come. I really do think the crop damage for farmers is going to be a lot worse than we think right now.
It's going to be horrible. I mean, it really is. The amount of rain that we haven't had, I heard the other day that we're down approaching 4 inches of rain in June and July. You can't expect that these farmers are going to be able to produce any kind of crops when we've got that little rain. And, I think it's also a little devastating to the psyche. When you go out to get the paper in the morning, or you go out to get in your car, and, it's already 86 degrees with a humidity of, probably that same level. It just has been devastating. And I will say one thing. I think that what the city and the county have done to create these cool spots, and the school district, for people to go has really been remarkable, and has helped us avoid a repeat of what we saw in 1995, where we had over 100 people who died of heat-related problems. So I think we've perhaps learned a little bit better collectively and civically to find ways to deal with the heat, but man, it's a killer.
Yeah, you were telling me before you don't have air conditioning in your house, as is the case for so many of the old homes in Milwaukee.
He gets that gentle lake breeze.
How in the world do you even sleep at night?
I've always said if you complain about heat in Wisconsin, you've lived in Wisconsin too long. Because, yeah, this has been extreme, and we are now noticing that, with global warming, we have extremes, whether it's drought or flooding or whatever else. But truthfully, what's it been? 3 days? I mean, we have fans in our house, and I ride around the convertible. I mean, I don't need, I can live with that for live with being uncomfortable for a few days. But this is in the course of human development. Heat is not a problem in Milwaukee, and the fact that Denise mentions the last time we had it this extreme was in 1995. That was when this show started. That's how long ago it's been. This show started in 1995. I happen to know that because another major event took place in 1995, which was the Journal and Sentinel merging. And that had a big effect on my life as well, more so than the heat.
Wow. Would you rather put up with this or 20 below zero and a bunch of snow?
Well, I probably just cranked up the heat on my own hiney with my previous comments about the mayor. Who's no doubt got a Bunsen burner that he's ready to chase me with. I have to agree with Joel that we don't have very sustained periods of extreme heat in Wisconsin, and because of being on the lakefront, we don't have a whole lot of periods where we have sustained heat and humidity. We get really nice breezes that blow and keep this community fairly cool in the summertime for the most part. But those periods when we get the heat, it's certainly oppressive. It's abysmal. My view is, you can only take so much clothing off before you either get arrested or laughed at.
Especially in your case.
And in my case especially. Laughed at before I get arrested, probably.
The mayor's not after you.
I'll walk you to your car.
Multi layers. Yeah. How will the police chief calculate that attack?
But my wife and I say, all right, you don't have to shovel this. You don't have to bring out the snowplow.
Right.
And yeah, sweet Jesus, it's hot, but holy mackerel, you want to complain? Don't complain.
No, I'm not complaining.
I mean, you got people in Colorado who are coming back to see their homes, and it's all ashes.
I just came back from there, as a matter of fact.
You have flooding in Florida, and you have trees being uprooted and falling on cars all over the Midwest, except here. You know what? Find air conditioning, take some clothes off, pour yourself a cold beer. It could be a lot worse.
Well, where it is a problem is for the poor and for the elderly, and you'll find them. You do, because you have a lot of them that really don't have the incomes that will allow for, in these long periods of heat, to crank up the air conditioning or keep fans running. And if people don't check on them, that's when
not to worry, because in 4 weeks it'll be winter, so we'll be rid of all this.
I won't be complaining about that.
Well, something that seems to stay hot no matter what the weather is: Republican opposition to Barack Obama. As we saw all week, the health care debate is one fight that's still going at full boil. But Rick Horowitz believes it's about more than just health care. Rick.
Pop quiz. A simple yes or no. In the last presidential election, one of the two major party nominees was not born in the United States. The answer is yes, and here he is. That's right, John McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone, where his father was in the U.S. Navy. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I only mention it because almost nobody else ever mentioned it or said John McCain wasn't eligible to be president or demanded to see his birth certificate. Unlike, say, his opponent, who was born in the United States, in Hawaii, which, trust me here, is a state. Some people just can't get used to it, the idea that the skinny guy with the big ears and the funny name is the duly elected leader of our country. By a landslide, actually. And they're not only questioning his legitimacy, they seem to be trying to erase every trace of him. When Republicans talk about cutting spending, they talk about going back to 2008 spending levels. 2008, before Barack Obama, in other words. And his most important legislative achievement, the Affordable Care Act, they tried to get it declared unconstitutional, and Republican governors said they wouldn't set up the state insurance exchanges to make it work, not until the Supreme Court had had a chance to throw the law out. And when they didn't throw it out, said it was constitutional, well, now the governors say they still won't set up the exchanges. Now they want to wait until after November in case they can throw Obama out. And they won't even agree to expand Medicaid coverage, federally funded Medicaid coverage. That's right, they'd rather deny health care to millions of their fellow Floridians or Texans or Wisconsinites than work with a law that Barack Obama got enacted. Republicans in Congress, meanwhile, they're not looking to amend the law. They talk like one Iowa congressman did about how it must be ripped out completely, lock, stock, and barrel, root and branch, no vestige left behind, not a DNA particle of Obamacare retained. Like he was never even there. Makes you wonder, what is it about the skinny guy with the big ears and the funny name and the unusual skin tone and... Wait, you don't think... Nah, it couldn't be that.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay cool, stay comfortable, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.